going to go as the season progresses.
We've got our usual array of questions and also topics that are obviously going to be, dare I say it, topical, like the Arc de Triomphe. Sure. Let's just bung you a couple of questions just to get the whole thing moving, Phil, and hopefully make you squirm a little bit. Because I mean, I know there are certain members of the BHA that get upset when we see this as a squirming show, but I tend to think that the viewers enjoy it more if we're both just on the edge.
Are you going to ask me about the horse that's unbeaten since the last programme, Countermeasure? Are you going to ask me about him?
What, the horse who struggled to win the maiden at Ascot off a ridiculous mark? Is that the one you're talking about?
Coasted home.
Well, it's so frustrating that we can't show this because I don't think it coasted home at all.
Coasted home.
Let's start with Countermeasure then, as Phil's brought this up. Countermeasure won a Mascot maiden by 8 lengths from a horse called Henry the Explorer. Henry the Explorer is a 16-time consecutive loser, rated 70. Try, Phil Smith, as you brought this up, and you've already now opened yourself up for huge problems, try and explain to me how a horse rated 70 is beaten 8 lengths and you think the horse that beat it is worth £42 higher mark for an 8th length beating. Try and work that out for me.
I don't think he was in that race, but he's still unbeaten, because I remember you saying to me in about three programmes ago, Countermeasure, he's never won a race.
Well, he's won one of the worst maidens. So you're saying because he's won one. So if he'd gone to Italy and won a 2-runner maiden, you'd now be having this argument.
I'd like to establish that part of your argument is now out the water because he has won a maiden.
Pathetic, honestly. If you carry on like this, the viewers will not take to you this show.
Okay,
let's. What mark is Countermeasure now?
He stayed the same.
Well, that's nice. At least you didn't raise him for beating a 70 rated. And just explain to me how a horse rated 112 who beats a 70 rated horse by 8 lengths. 110.
Well, he was 110, then we moved him up to 112, if you remember.
So has he been dropped £2?
No.
So he's 112.
Yeah.
Okay. Explain to me how a horse who beats a horse rated 70 by 8 lengths gets a rating £42 higher than that.
Well, he doesn't. He took the rating into the race, so he doesn't get it from that race.
Okay, I'll ask a different question.
But there's many occasions when horses win a race and they don't actually have to perform to their best.
You always wiggle out of this question, so I'll ask it differently in a way that you cannot wiggle out of it.
Okay.
Would you, Phil Smith, fancy Countermeasure to beat Henry the Explorer? Having given it £7 and an 8 length beating, would you fancy Countermeasure to give it £42? Straight face while saying that, but that is why you are the chief. Let's go back to one of the questions that I would have asked you if you hadn't opened yourself up to that ridiculous suggestion. There's a horse, says Andrew. It idles, it flashes its tail in the finish. How do you assess that horse?
Well, to a great extent, it's you using your experience as a race reader and your interpretation of what's happened. So certainly it would be given, let's say it's won by 2 lengths and it's idled in circumstances like that, then you might double the distance to 4 lengths. But it's a lot of it's done on experience. I mean, some horses that idle, you find out next time that actually, yes, they looked as if they were idling, but they didn't actually have much in return. But in the short term, you have to take some action because everybody's seeing the fact that it's idled, and you take some action and you probably will maybe double the winning distance from, if it was 2, you'd maybe double it to 4 and call it a 4-length winner and see what happens next time. If events eventually showed you that you've been a bit unkind, then you'd take that off pretty quickly.
And Red Devil Boy, we won't hold that against him, says, and this is a question that is often asked. Now, I come out with the answer that I think you're more harsh, but you may say actually that I'm wrong in saying that, in which case I'll take that on board. Do you take into consideration if a jockey eases down, effectively tries to fool you like Countermeasure has, when he knows he's won, to keep the distance down? How much are you fooled by jockeys?
Matt, you're absolutely right. Your interpretation of that is spot on.
So you're more harsh?
We're definitely more harsh because, you know, a horse, you know, if you imagine a race where the jockey's looking over his shoulder over the last furlong and wins by a half length, and you'll hear the commentators say, oh, that he's won cleverly there. We actually think he's won stupidly because we're then into the realms of guesswork. And we've got to try and give that horse, but also all the horses he's going to meet next time, an equal chance when they meet each other. And if we've got to guess, we'll guess high. We have a maxim, when in doubt, you have to favour the majority over the minority, and we have to be cognizant of the fact that all of the other horses that he's going to meet next time, we're happy with their ratings. So yes, it's a big error when jockeys try and win cleverly. It's actually not cleverly at all.
No, the worst thing you can do effectively, just pretend like you do when it's not the right day. Paul Clifford has been on. And this is a question that has come up before, but there'll be people who haven't watched before. We know that there are some owners and trainers out there that as handicappers you just simply cannot get to grips with, that they beat you effectively at your own game. So Paul says, does Phil pay attention to certain trainers' horses more? And he puts hashtag Gordon Elliott. So he clearly feels, Paul feels that Gordon Elliott is beating you. Do you feel there are trainers out there who are just too good for the handicappers?
You could interpret that question as actually saying that we're too harsh on Gordon Elliott's horses, couldn't you? That's a different interpretation of the question.
That is a different... Let's go with mine, which would be more interesting.
We'll go with yours. Look, we're not scared of any trainers. We do what we think is correct.
But
we watch
we're
race...
not scared of them. We don't think you're scared of them. But which ones of them terrify you from the point of view you know they're hiding something because you know how they operate?
Trainers do not terrify me. Most of them are pussycats.
In that case, are they terrifying some members of your crew?
They're not terrifying any members of the crew, because we take each race on its merits. All we have to go on is the result, which is there in black and white, and our interpretation of the video that we've watched.
Right. But that's not true, is it?
It's true. It's absolutely true. But we can't possibly.
That's not really true.
If I said to you as an answer to that question, well, what we do with trainer X or Y, or owner X and Y, is we add on £6 or £5 or £4, you'd say that's absolutely, completely out of order. And it would be completely out of order.
Well, that's because they're better than you.
Well, are they?
Well, which trainers do you feel are canny? Play the system well?
I think there's a lot of trainers who are canny.
Well, name us a few. Which ones do you feel play the system well?
It's not a question of playing the system.
Smart Prescott?
Let me tell you what I think is the great gift of some trainers, and that's putting the horse in the right race. For me, that's absolutely the key. I'm sure 90% of them, possibly more, can keep their horses fit and healthy and ready to run the race of their life. But very often, we'll look at a race and think, why is that horse running in that race? There are some trainers who are particularly clever at getting the horse in the race where they think it's got the best chance of winning. And actually, that's a gift for a trainer. Does that scare me? It doesn't scare me, but I'm full of admiration for trainers who regularly put their horses in what I would call the correct race for them.
Gavin, a little earlier on, said, I can't remember what we said about Hollywood Road. Gavin says Hollywood Road wins. Remember Chapman asked the handicap about this horse and it goes and wins on its current mark. I remember we did chat about Hollywood Road, didn't we, before the Ebor? And I can't remember exactly what we said. Do you remember that conversation?
Can't remember.
No, we can't remember, so we're not going to carry on there. No. Right, do we need to take a break, crew, or can we start a big topic now? Shall we go for a quick break, Phil, and then we're going to really get stuck into the Arc. Phil is going to tell us which horses can win the Arc, and more importantly, which horses can't win the Arc de Triomphe. We'll be back.
William Hill sponsors coverage on At the Races.
The new Xbox One S 500GB FIFA pack is out now at Smith's Toy Superstores. Get the new Xbox One console with the new FIFA 17, an extra controller and Minecraft for $269.99. The perfect family bundle of 2 games, 2 controllers and the new Xbox One S console. Out now at Smith's Toy Superstores.
Roll up, roll up. The BT Fabulous Fortnight is now on. And ladies and gentlemen, we're offering you unlimited BT broadband and unlimited UK weekend calls for an incredible 62% off. That's an unmissable £5 a month. What's more, it's just a 12-month contract. And if you order online by the 10th of October, a £50 BT reward card can be all yours. So get 62% off unlimited BT broadband for £5 a month in this unmissable deal. But you need to hurry as our fabulous fortnight ends 10th of October. Join us today. Call 0800 002 002 or visit bt.com/sale.
Introducing Coca-Cola Zero Sugar with new improved taste. Tastes more like Coke, looks more like Coke. Don't you know you may be due PPI compensation? Not interested? Banks have set aside billions in PPI compensation, yet you've still done nothing about it. Can you really afford not to find out if you're owed up to £7,000? If you're nervous, unsure, or simply don't know, call Gladstone Brooks on 08000 46 90 90 or go online and we'll guide you through the process. After all, it's what we do.
Gladstone Brooks. One day, we'll all pass away. But if you can't afford to pay for your funeral, who will? If your loved ones have to find the money for your funeral and other related costs, they could be looking for over £7,000.
So, why not do what I did? I took out a funeral protection plan from Promise Life. If something happens to me, they'll get a fast payout of up to £20,000. And depending on what level of cover you want, protection could start from as little as £1.63 a week.
So make a promise of your own. Call Promise Life today on 0800 907 0800.
William Hill sponsors coverage on At the Races.
Welcome back to Ask the Handicapper. Thanks to Danny's tweet, who just says, are Phil Smith's fees higher than Willie Mullins's? Thanks for that. The answer to that question is most definitely actually judged by the last invoice. Right, as I promised before the break, the Arc de Triomphe, big race, it's all live on At the Races. We'll be there both days, Saturday and Sunday, bringing you the best TV in the business from the Arc. But who is going to win the Qatar-sponsored Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe? That is the big question. And Phil, you can first of all perhaps tell us which horses cannot win on statistics.
OK. Well, looking at the ratings going into the race of the last 10 arcs,
it's a fairly small.
Well, I think I'm always very wary of going further back than 10 years because trends in horse racing change.
Don't tell Big Mac that. He goes absolutely crazy if you don't go back to 1836.
Well, that's Big Mac.
OK.
Right, I go back 10 years and I'm wary of going much further than that. And you can see on the screen there, it gives the pre-race rating of the winners and the post-race rating. And the interesting part, obviously, for your viewers at the moment is the pre-race rating. And if you look down there, you'll see obviously got Golden Horn on 130, Trev on 190 with a bit of a star next to it because obviously she was higher. That's what she'd achieved in 2014, but clearly she was a 130 filly the previous year. Trev 121, and then we've got the blip, if you like, and then after Solomir 21, 26, 35, 24, 29, and then Rail Link 19. And so basically what I'm suggesting is if you're rated less than 119, it's only a fluke will win you going into the race. It's only a fluke that you'll win the Arc, because if you think back to Solomir's race, she was mighty lucky because Orfèvre did all sorts of stuff wrong in the final furlong. And interesting that figure of Solomir post-race 122, that stayed. She only ran, I think, once more after that. That stayed £7 higher than any previous performance. Generally, the international handicappers hate one-off performances, and arithmetically, you probably could have got her higher, but we tried to downgrade her because it was very much a one-off performance, and I think most people would say that Orfèvre probably should have won the race. So what I am saying to you is it's highly unlikely that anything rated less than 119, who's never done a 119 performance, will win the Arc on Sunday.
We need to be more specific than that, Phil, though. Which horses, therefore, does that rule out at the moment of the leading contenders?
Well, it's easier for me to tell you who it rules in.
OK.
If you look at our Longines World's Best horses, you'll see when you look at that, obviously there's a few who aren't running in the race, but the first one you come to is clearly Postponed, who is in the race, and he's on 124. You've got Harzand on 123. Interesting, obviously, last run under a cloud, and it's interesting about whether he'll cope with the forecast good ground or better good to firm ground. Found, of course, is very interesting because you have to add £3 onto that because she gets a filly's allowance. So obviously her performance, and that comes from her last race. We know she stays a mile and a half. She was arguably a little bit unlucky in the race last year with not getting a run forward. But also the interesting thing about her, she's beaten the boys in a mile and a half Group 1 already, because obviously she won at Breeders' Cup last year. So she's fascinating. Working your way down from her, Highland Reel. We've got him on 121. The Japanese horse, Makahiki, on 121. And then further down there, you've got that is in that race.
Just, you said
Order of St George, right? This year, only 119, best performance.
So Order of St George cannot win the Arc on this year's performances.
Well, it's unlikely. There is a 119 there, Trev with a star. Order of St George would be 119 with a star because he was higher last year.
So
he was
like
124.
a get-out clause, though, isn't it?
It's a get-out clause,
It
yeah.
is. It means
So I
you
think
can't
Order
be
of St
wrong on
George, but again, you'd like to think that probably be some rain would have to come for Order of St George. But he's in a sort of similar position to Trev in 2014. His highest performance this year is 119, which is why he wasn't on the list of world's leading horses. That only goes down to 120. But we know he was better last year. So, yeah, he's on a 119. So they're the ones that would look as if they can win the race. The rest of the others, looking at history, would find it very difficult.
Just on Found, there have been occasions, particularly, of course, in the Arc last year, where she looked very unlucky, but then again, she was never in the race and came through beaten horses, and you're always slightly weary of that. You made a statement, you said, we know she stays a mile and a half. I personally just think that could be arguable, in that she was, of course, second at York, but that was on very fast ground, but only second to Seventh Heaven, and, you know, second to Postponed at Epsom, mile and a half, one at Keelan, but you'd ignore Breeders' Cup form as far as distances are concerned, and then the only other time...
Whoa. That's a very glib statement. You'll ignore Breeders' Cup form.
You're not telling me that you're comparing mile and a half Breeders' Cup form with mile and a half European Arc form.
On turf, generally the European horses are better, yeah. But I don't think you can just completely dismiss it. The very fact is... I haven't completely
dismissed it, but I mostly dismissed it.
It sounded to me like a complete dismissal.
Well,
right?
You need to listen more.
So, for me, the fact that she's shown she stays a mile and a half in America...
I think it's open to debate.
She may not be good enough, but I think she stays a mile and a half.
Possibly. Postponed is a King George winner, Juddmonte International winner, Coronation Cup winner. In some ways, do you think he is underrated because of the horses he's running against?
OK. As you know, every month we produce our monthly Longines list of the world's best horses. We have lots of emails flying around from the international handicappers. And almost to a man over the last 2 or 3 months, we've said, we think Postponed is too low in our list. How can we get him higher? And handicappers can only get horses higher if they can justify it. I think every handicapper in the world believes Postponed is better than a 124, but it's impossible to justify. So he's a fascinating horse. He's a horse. When you get winners, it's very difficult for handicappers to actually get to the bottom of winners. You find out more about a horse when it loses than when it wins. And Postponed is a classic example of that.
So could he be, obviously he's a different type of horse and you have a different following particularly as well, but is he kind of the See the Stars? That his rating is governed by what he's had to beat along the way?
Absolutely. I mean, he's been brilliantly placed. Can I say I think he's been brilliantly trained by both trainers who've had him. Absolutely brilliantly, right the way throughout.
There's a strong argument, isn't there, that he's doing now because of how he was looked after before?
And that's no question about that, right? He was brilliantly trained as a 3-year-old.
Well, there is a question because Mohammed Obeid doesn't agree with that.
That's there for different reasons, right? He was brilliantly trained by both of his trainers, and now the connections are reaping the benefit, and also great choice of target. So again, the point I mentioned before about one of the great arts of a trainer is getting the horse in the right race. He's absolutely been in the right race every time. So, Postponed. The international handicappers are desperately keen to get him higher, but we can't justify it at the moment. He's one of those horses who we know he's better than that, and we can't justify it. In fact, interestingly, when he was a 3-year-old, I tried to get him into our list at the end of the year on 118. For this very reason, I said to them, look, I know this is a better horse. He should be in on 118, but I was argued down because I couldn't actually justify it, and he was given 116. It was difficult to justify on the facts, but I knew he was better than that.
At no stage, when you're clearly stood at your lectern, when you're saying this to the other handicappers, do you not simply just say, I am the chief? Listen, my flock.
Unfortunately, the other handicappers are the chiefs in their own country, and so they have.
No, you can only have one chief.
They're keen to argue me down.
Well, this is clearly a problem with the system which needs to be changed. Carl Hughes, because it's always good to get the questions from the viewers straight away in this. What rating did Found run to when second to Almanzor, and does that put her in the mix?
And that's the figure that you've just seen.
That's the figure, is it?
That we think that was her best ever run. And again, she was another one who, she was a frustrating filly in the sense that we always felt that she was a little bit better than that. I think you're watching the race now. I mean, the International Handicappers' view is this was the best race we've seen so far this year. This was a true race.
You don't think there was a track bias?
There was a well, in what sense? The horse that won came from last.
Yeah, but no, from the point of view that almost all the winners that day at Leopardstown went down the middle of the track, and Minding went steering towards the inside.
It's possible. I don't think she was helped by going on the inside in terms of the run of the race. But this was a truly run. We're always whinging and complaining that these Group 1s are run at a false pace. This was a proper race where they went off at a terrific pace, and Almanzor has come and is absolutely, slaughtered them at the end. And the fact is that she's the second best horse in the race. So I'm a big Found fan from this. I mean, you can see this. They're coming well clear of everything else off a really quick pace. That's top quality form.
Yeah, this is a really good question actually by someone, and I don't know off the top of my head because I can't remember, but you may feel Breeders' Cup. Mm-hmm. Did Found race with Lasix in the Breeders' Cup?
I've no idea.
No. Well, let's just go on the basis she did.
Okay.
Although we don't know. Because Gareth says if she raced with Lasix in the Breeders' Cup, surely you couldn't relate that handicap mark to what she does in Newark without Lasix, which is a very good question. Drugged up stateside.
We have to give horses, our job is to give horses ratings on what they achieve on the track. We're nothing to do with the medication side. That's up to other people in other jurisdictions to make those decisions. So all our job is to rate the horse on what it's achieved, whether it's having got Lasix, not got Lasix, got Bute, not got Bute, none of our business.
Yes, I think the BHA will like that answer. Gareth has also been on the same chaff before that tweet, and he just says, Matt, could you just ask Phil if he does hate you and your questions?
I really like you, Matt. You're one of my best friends in racing, and some of your questions are quite good at times.
You are a horrible, horrible individual. Right, this is quite a lot of questions about left hand. Don't take that smirk off your face. Quite a lot of questions about left hand. Mm-hmm. The Vermeer winner, mm-hmm. who was impressive enough in a tight race. Philip says, do you think left can win or place in the Arc? I'm hoping so. From what we know of left hand, is she good enough?
Well, she's got two great advantages and one disadvantage in my view. First of all, she's a filly, so she gets a filly's allowance. Secondly, she's a 3-year-old, so she gets a 3-year-old weight for age allowance, which I think we're going to discuss later. So there's certain advantages there, and 3-year-olds, I think into the last 22 arcs, 3-year-olds have won 77% of the last 22 from something like 25% of the runners. So you ignore the 3-year-olds at your peril. So they're the two things she's got going for herself. On the debit side, her form's not good enough.
Hold on, Phil. That is a brilliant... I'm going to tweet that as you'd say that again. Phil Smith has just said about 3-year-olds... What? Repeat that just slowly enough so I can type it.
Well, she's a filly, so she gets a filly's allowance, which is obviously handy.
Yeah, but the thing about percentage-wise and how many they've won, all those guys, do those sticks for me?
The last 22 arcs...
Last 22 arcs...
77% have been won by 3-year-olds.
77% won by 3-year-old, yeah.
From around 25% of the runners.
Perfect. I put good knowledge at the end. Because that is good knowledge. So, yes, so 3-year-olds, up-and-coming horses is what we're saying, do have an advantage. And, of course...
Or have had an advantage.
Yeah, well, have an advantage because, of course, you may not have tinkered with the weight for age scale enough in the future.
Well, absolutely.
But, so
but to go back to left hand, Vermeer, Prix Vermeer has got a good record of producing arc winners, we know. But you'd have to say that at the moment, her form, she's obviously going in the right direction, but at the moment, her form has got a lot to, she's got a lot of improvement to make. She's going to need to improve probably, I would say, 8 to 10 pound on her Vermeer form to win an Arc. And she, you know, I could see her running a big race and finishing 4th or 5th.
Yes. Okay. Declan also really wanted to know about left hand. I mean, I can't see her being quite good enough, but you've given her a sort of...
Well, I've said her form's not good enough.
Can we just go back to the original list we put up of the last Art winners? Because there is something that just, when we were going through it, and nothing to do with the Art, but just slapped me straight in the face, like a really sort of horrible fish. I just looked at these and I suddenly thought, look at those 219s. And under your current ratings, you believe that Countermeasure would have won the 2014 or 2006 Arcs if it had been getting £7 from these two?
I don't.
Well, you rated Countermeasure 112, I believe.
He's 112, yeah.
And that's rated 119 pre-race, and Rail Link was rated 119 pre-race.
But he doesn't get £7 in the Arc.
Yes, but if it was a handicap, you're saying that Countermeasure is within £7 of Trev and Salemi. I mean, what kind of planet would you have to come from to come up with a figure like that?
Well,
£7?
Well, we'll see when
Would you
Countermeasure
fancy
runs...
Trev to give Countermeasure £7, is all I'm asking?
Well, Countermeasure would get £3 from Trev would get £3 from Countermeasure.
Would you fancy Countermeasure beating Trev getting £10?
Well, I think it'd be interesting.
There you will. I can tell in your face you realise how ridiculous
It would be
that sounds. It sounds ridiculous.
That 119, remember, that was in a season when she'd not really fired, she'd had all sorts of issues, and that was the best she'd done going into the race. Look at the second figure in the chart, Matt, and you'll see that she was a 130. So we're not, you're being very selective
of course.
In your rating.
I am, as you are, in every rating that you do. You've told us this, how selective you have to be. So that is the way handicapping goes. I'm surprised you didn't know that. It is a very selective thing. But it's
interpretive.
Yeah. But it's interesting that the handicappers feel that getting £10, Countermeasure would beat Trev.
Not at her best.
Well, you're being selective now. As far as, we know you're not allowed to bet, you always tell us that.
No.
But as far as the winner of the Arc is concerned, Mick Kinnan went for Postponed, the favourite. As a handicapper, is it almost impossible not to pick Postponed as the most likely winner?
Well, you'll have seen from those ratings, you know, those international ratings that we've got there, it's really, really tight. I mean, I sort of rather hope that Postponed wins the race. I hope he wins the race because I've always felt, you know, he's a potential superstar and he hasn't quite hit the nail on the head just yet in terms of his rating. You know, he keeps winning, but I don't think people at the moment, you know, put him in the Golden Horn category, do they? And I think he's probably, the reality is he's not a million miles behind horses like him. So I hope Postponed wins. But at the weights, I think, you know, Founder's clearly got a good chance. I don't agree with your dismissal of Highland Reel. I'm sure Highland Reel will run a big race.
If Highland Reel won the Arc, we'd all be very depressed.
Well, will we be depressed when Rail Link won it?
Pretty.
Oh, okay. So occasionally Arc winners depress you?
Yeah, but we don't want to be depressed.
That's right. No, which is why I would like Postponed to win.
We didn't mention the Japanese one much.
That's who I was going to come back
to.
You know, because Makahiki is he's on 121. He didn't need to perform to that level when he won the Prix Niel. And I think connections have said that he wasn't 100%, you know, fit and ready to run for his life on that day, and why should he be? So Makahiki has to come into consideration. I mean, the Japanese have been so unlucky year after year after year with their runners in the Arc, but it's very rare, and one of your viewers might tell me, I'm not sure they've brought many, if any, 3-year-olds. So maybe somebody will research that while we're on the programme. And I think he might be the first, but it certainly hasn't been many 3-year-olds who've come. So that's a very interesting situation. You know, the likes of Orfèvre, etc., were, you know, older horses who we knew a lot about, and they'd clearly got good form back home in Japan, as he has. But it's the first time they brought a 3-year-old who may well still be progressing quite a lot.
And that run against Midterm, I find very, very hard to weigh up. A, they were all in a heap. And the other thing is, you know, it's very easy to forget that at one stage at the start of the season, Midterm was quite a lot of people's considered winner of the Derby, and obviously things didn't work out like that. But if Midterm is back in some sort of shape, that might be a really good performance.
It's interesting when you look at the Prix Niel, because most years you'll find the winner obviously will run in the Arc, but often the second and the third run, because it's a prep race. You have to accept it's a prep race, and it's usually a very slowly run prep race, and you know, lots of the horses can progress from there. But I think I'm right in saying that Makahiki's the only runner from the Prix Niel who's running in the race this year.
Yes, I think you are right. Good research again. There are only about 4 in the race, mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, isn't it? You know, you often find the Prix Niel is a race where 2 or 3 might go on and run in the Arc. So it's interesting that he's the only one this year. He's got to have progressed from the Niel, otherwise he won't win. But there's every reason to think that he might have done.
Yeah.
So to be able to forecast the winner with any great certainty when you've got Postponed on 24, Harzand on 23, we haven't really gone into detail about him, obviously slightly under a cloud from last time and perhaps might be better on softer ground. But 2 months ago, 3 months ago, he was my Arc winner, you know, because I thought there's bound to be a bit of give. He's very, very progressive. So Harzand, you know, you can't leave him out of at least your consideration.
Is New Bay a bit of a flincher?
Well, New Bay is a flincher. You know, I suspect if they sent New Bay to America, he'd do exactly what Flinch has done and absolutely mop up, because there's no question that the North American staying turf horses are not as good as the European ones. And Flincher wins comfortably every time he runs. But New Bay, I think, was he third in the race last year, dividing some really nice horses. New Bay is, I suppose, what we would call our marker horses. But again, he's a little bit like Trev. He's got a star next to his performances this year, because he was a 122 in the Arc last year. He hasn't done that so far this year, which is why he's not in our list of world's leading horses so far this year. But he has the potential to be a 122/123 horse. You know, if he was third or fourth, we'd probably base the race through him.
Yeah, and people are, you know, you've slightly been fluffy clouded so far. Nailing your what's it to the mast, the winner of the Arc is, and not just because you can't face going back to this conference and being wrong about Postponed. The winner is?
Found or Postponed.
So 2 out of the first 3 in the market.
Why are they the first 2 or 3? Why are they the first 2?
Because they are the top 2.
Because people have looked at our ratings and have put 2 and 2 together and generally find that in Group 1s our ratings are pretty accurate.
Most of our viewers and punters will narrow their selection down to 1 in the Arc, Phil. Could you?
No, because I think it's really open.
Well, it can't be that open. You've picked 2.
Well, you asked me to. You forced me to. You twisted my arm up my back and said...
Well, you want more than 2, really?
Well, I think Makahiki could win it. It would not surprise me if Harzand won the race.
If Mrs. Smith was here, because she's the kind of lady who doesn't accept this kind of waffle. If she was here...
She married me, so she must do.
Well, let's hope that lasts. If she said, come on, Philip, let's say you're lying back, and you're, Philip, come on, just tell me the one for the Arc. Which one would you end up with out of Postponed and Found? I'm not going to say, because I think they both got a pretty good chance. We're only looking at £1. If you know, remember what happened to Found last year. You know, there's 19 runners at Shanty. You know, there's going to be some tales of bad luck for sure, and Found's style of running is such that she's a potential for bad luck. Okay. So that's why we're paying the big bucks. After much analysis of sort of gnashing of teeth, Phil has finally decided that the Arc will be won this year by either the favourite or the second favourite. On that bombshell, Phil Smith, we go for a break.
William Hill sponsors coverage on At the Races.
Max, got your ball! Oh no, the phone is calling someone!
Hello, dear. You've called me on my mobile.
Grandma!
Oh, that cough sounds horrible. Well, don't worry about dinner. I'm making sausages.
Sausages!
Seriously, guys, you need to hang up.
Wrapped in bacon.
Oh, you could say bacon for hours. Oh.
This call is gonna cost a fortune.
And for dessert, cake.
Did she say cake?
With ice cream.
Yum.
Keep on talking with free calls to mobiles with any Sky Talk pack. Sky, believe in better.
During difficult times, it's good to know that Bupa Health Insurance is there for you and your family.
Every move that I made,
We can help get you fast diagnosis and expert care should you need it,
in my heart and my soul.
so you can focus on what's important. And with Bupa, families save 10% on health insurance. Call now on 0800 665 665 or search Bupa Family for more information.
If you're looking to transform your business, we've got amazing deals, like this Ford Transit Custom for just £155 per month.
This is an announcement from Scope. Should you meet a disabled person, Scope says, hide. No, not hide. Hide. H, say hi. I, introduce yourself. D, don't panic. E, end the awkward.
Find out how you can HIDE at scope.org.uk.
We are Funding Circle. We help businesses grow with affordable loans. Businesses just like yours. And we work fast by making decisions quickly, so you can focus on doing what you do best. Our rates start at 6% per year. You'll get a quote instantly, and a dedicated account manager is on hand for you every step of the way. Funding Circle, better business loans. Get an instant quote at fundingcircle.com.
Experience golf in South Carolina, home of Hilton Head Island, Myrtle Beach, and the world-renowned Kiwa Island in Charleston. With 7 nights self-catering accommodation and 4 rounds from £629 per person. Book before the 30th of September to receive a Callaway Great Big Bertha. Golfbreaks.com, saving golfers time and money.
With Wix.com, you can create your own stunning website, all by yourself. Go to Wix.com to create your website today. It's easy and free.
William Hill sponsors coverage on At the Races.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. During the break, Phil gave me this laminated bit of paper with a lot of numbers on it, so I thought, right, we'll leave that for the time being. Crikey. We'll get back to Wait for Age later, of course. It's been something that we've discussed at length on this show. We've been predicting Phil would change the system, and he's been going, don't know when it will happen. Well, it has, of course, happened. Joe, I think this is the kind of email that could really upset you, Phil, although it's nothing personal. He says, if Found wins the Arc, I'll be disappointed. Good horse, but she's not special.
Interesting.
Discuss. Imagine you're at school and someone's just sent that in, you're in class, discuss.
I think he's got a point. Is she special? Not yet, perhaps, but I think perhaps events have conspired against her. The one thing I would word of caution to your viewers about her, if you look at her track record last year, she got better and better and better in the autumn. And it's interesting that her best performance this year was obviously in the Irish Champion. So no surprise. I mean, fillies often do that. You know, they really progress in the autumn of their 3-year-old career. The following year, when they run in May and June, you think, oh, they're maybe not so clever. And then all of a sudden, they progress again in the autumn of their 4-year-old time. There's quite a few horses that, who've done that over the years. So it would be no surprise to me to see Found improve again. And I think she'll probably have to win the race.
I wondered, and this is not because she's ungenuine, clearly she's not, but I wondered if they might just stick a pair of cheek pieces or just something on her, because while you can justify all those second places, I'm equally in the back of my mind just thinking, is there something that might just help her?
Well, again, going back to our deliberations when we're looking at the world rankings, Tom Robbins, the man who represents USA, he often talks about, you know, he's always prepared to give girls who beat the boys higher ratings. The Americans in particular are really impressed with the girls who beat the boys. So, you know, he would be a found supporter purely because of what happened, obviously, at Keeneland last year. And I think that's an interesting one. I mean, people have talked a lot this year about the filly in America, Songbird. We have her on 122. She's absolutely fantastic.
She's miles better than that, isn't she?
But is she a giant amongst pygmies?
No. A giant amongst pygmies?
Yes. Is she?
Crikey. Is that how you talk at your handicapping meeting?
Is she?
Is that what you'll come to the Arts? You have the winner postponed or something, and you'll be going to look at the pygmies?
Is she Gulliver in Lilliput?
A what?
Is she Gulliver in Lilliput?
Gulliver and Lilliput?
Yeah. Is she fantastic, but against some very, very
think you've just come on Loose Women or something?
Is she change of? Or is she? Are
you going to get another? Come on, another.
Is she just okay?
I thought you were going to come up with another one. Then.
Is she just okay, or is she the real deal?
Right.
Because we can only get her to 122 only. Well, that's way behind Zarkava. It's way behind Trev. It's way behind Zenyatta. And yet here she is in America beating all that's put before her. But is everything that's been put before her moderate?
A ribeye steak amongst beef burgers.
Oh, well, there's a good analogy, yeah.
I can't believe I get lumped with this.
So what do you think? So Songbird, have we got her too low on 122?
Absolutely, yeah. She is a monster of the dirt.
Why do you think they haven't run her against the boys?
Because I think they're waiting for her to be a 4-year-old to do that.
Okay. Good enough reason.
Yep. Yeah, well, you know, that's what I'm here for.
We'll find out next year how good she is.
Right, loads of other emails coming through. We're going to do some random questions before we get on to this thing.
Okay.
These are completely random. Bobby just talking about there's a few better rides and would have won a few more this year.
Sorry,
we're talking about found better rides. Has she been unlucky?
She certainly wasn't unlucky in the last race at Leopardstown. I mean, he's a top horse, Al Manzour. So she certainly wasn't unlucky in that race. As I say, she got hammered by Postponed at Epsom. Was it 4 lengths, 4.5 lengths?
Although tactically that race played into Postpone's hands.
Sure. So she was probably not at her best, as I said, in the middle of the summer. She was certainly unlucky in last year's Arc.
Is there an argument the better the race is, the better she runs, and the bigger the field there is, the better she runs? Maybe she's not tactically suited to tactical Group 1s.
Well, I think going back to the Irish Champion Stakes, why was she able in that race to show how good she is? Because they want to go a proper pace. So many Group 1s, as we've said earlier, are run. There's 4 or 5, 6 runners max. Everybody's looking at each other. Nobody sets a decent pace. Sometimes pacemakers are put in there, then go herring off and are doing absolutely no good at all for anybody. And so therefore, conditions I think have got to be right for her. I think she needs a really fast run race. Perhaps over a mile and a quarter. I thought your point earlier about does she really truly stay a mile and a half is an interesting one, and we'll find out at the weekend.
Because I wouldn't judge her on the Arc. The Arc, if you watched the Arc last year, your eye tells you she's staying on strongly, but she was still on the snaff turning in that day. She never got in the race at all. And as we all know, when horses are battling away for an extra 2 furlongs rather than flashing through the beaten ones, it can be a very different game.
You're absolutely right, and I've learned from errors I've made in handicapping over many years that why are horses unlucky in races? Because they're not good enough.
It's funny that you say that. Basically what you're saying is the form in those Group 1s can be suspect in the small field ones, and yet you still rate Countermeasure 112. Despite admitting that the form is suspect.
The form can be suspect, and when he runs again in a Group 3 or a Group 1 as a pacemaker again, we'll find out about him. And I'm happy to come out and eat big slice of humble pie, Matt, similar to what you did with the Gordon Elliott horse.
Oh, you are so bitter, aren't you? You have to get one. It's nip and tuck for you, isn't it? Without any nip or any tuck individually, it's just. You have to go. You must be impossible at BHA meetings. No wonder they're happy when you're here.
They are.
Ray says,
they're overjoyed.
Completely different question. Can you ask Phil if the draw bars, for example, in the Air Gold Cup is taken into account?
Yes.
In what? How do you take it into account?
Well, if a horse is... I mean, first of all, we don't prejudge the draw, but we do... I mean, something that I do, and I think quite a few of the other guys do, when I used to do the sprinters many years ago, I would just sort of shade in all the horses drawn 1 to 10, shade in the horses drawn 11 to 20, different colour, and it just jumps straight out at you. Now, if you've got a horse that's clearly drawn on the wrong side, that's won its previous race, then why are you going to drop that horse? Because, you know, it's clearly inconvenienced by the draw.
Max
and some years ago, and perhaps Ian Balding might remember the name of this horse, when I did the Stewards' Cup, there was a horse trained by Ian Balding who finished either 6th or 7th in the Stewards' Cup, but he won the race on his side, and I put him up a pound, and Ian was clearly massively unhappy about that. And I put him up a pound for finishing 6th or 7th. He won his next race, though.
Oh, look at you again. Justified.
Well, I could sort of understand where he was coming from.
Yeah. Max has emailed in. Max, it's a very reasonable email, but unfortunately this is the kind of thing that Phil absolutely just laps up. It's like he just soaks into him, this kind of thing, and he will come out with absolute waffle for the answers. Valsalida goes up £5 after a fall. Is it fair? And how can you say if it would have won or not? It's bad enough on the owners and trainers that they fall. Then they're given a penalty. The young master wins. It's disqualified because of an entry rule. Then goes up £14 for his assets. Fair or not? Please ask Phil for his reasoning. Are you a fair man, Phil Smith?
I suppose the honest answer is you're trying to be fair to all of the other horses as well as to the horse that's fallen. And if you did nothing, if a horse is 2 fences clear and falls at the last and you don't do something, are you then therefore gifting him a race next time at the expense of all of the other horses in that race? So yes, I understand it's one of those as an owner or a trainer that you take on the chin, but our statistics show that when we do that with horses, they've got a pretty high success rate next time. And just interestingly, you know, going back to the young master, he did eventually win, didn't he? You know, so yes, again, commiserations with Connections after the Wincanton run. But remember, the interesting thing about the young master, that happened, and he was in the Wincanton race off 130, and he won at Sandown off 148. So putting him up for running in a race that he shouldn't have run in actually didn't do him any harm.
You need to play with your machine for a second, as McCruitt would call it, a computer to most of us. We're going back to the 13th of August 2016, a horse called Firefighting.
Oh, yeah.
Beat Knight's Table.
Yep.
And then I shall go through this email once you've got it up.
Yeah, I'm up to run.
OK,
with him.
because it's fair to say that David Lamb is not going to be sending you a Christmas card. Hi, Matt. I pointed out various discrepancies with handicapped horses before. If I tried hard enough and could be bothered, I could fill the show with queries and questions about the handicapped horses that Phil Smith handicaps. Anyway, he didn't say that, but I did it in for dramatic. Anyway, I want you to have a look at this handicap. Firefighting was raised £5, according to this fella, David. 108 to 113. Fair enough, he says. No problem. Second, Knight's Table remained on 95. Seemed fair enough. Third horse was beaten another length and a half. Remained on 93. Would have a bit to find with the second, but fair enough, he says. But, and this is where he starts to lose his rag. The fourth Great Hall, beaten a nose to the third, dropped £4, 97 to 93. Now, he says, if that wasn't incredible enough, and he uses the word incredible, the fifth, beaten a 1.5 legs to the fourth, was dropped not £4, like Great Hall, but only £3, from 100 to 97. And the basically gist after that, in my words, is explain yourself.
So your viewer is not happy when we drop horses a lot, because most of the time...
No, I must carry on.
Most of the time we're criticised for not dropping horses enough.
Well, he doesn't care what you're criticised for. He's bringing up this point. Okay. He says, so, Matt, the discrepancy between the third and fourth is ridiculous, but the discrepancy between the fourth and the fifth is incredulous.
Okay. Well, first of all...
I rest my case.
The fifth horse is beaten by 8.5 lengths, right? He ran off 97 in the race, and his performance figure, what we think he achieved in the race, was 89. So he's run £8 below his best. So Why was he on 97 in the first place? He was on 97 from his previous form. So with that particular horse, we could technically have completely ignored the run because he's obviously run below his best in that race. As it happens, we dropped him. But it wasn't not necessarily going to work absolutely in kilter with the horse that's in front, because we'll look at the overall profile of both of those horses who both clearly ran below their best. And the drop that they'll get may not be necessarily relevant to this particular race where they've both underperformed, but we'll go back to a previous race and drop them according to what their previous form is.
With Great Hall.
Is that a sensible answer? Yes.
With Great Hall,
good.
Did he then go and win his next 2 races?
Did he go and win his next 2 races? Well, he was 4th in this particular race, and he didn't go and win his next 2 races, no. He then finished 8th of 9 at Newmarket. Then he finished 2nd of 5th at Yarmouth, and we dropped him again to 90. Then he finished 2nd at Yarmouth off 90, and we left him, and then he's just won off 90.
Twice, I think, isn't he? He's won his last 2, isn't he?
Well, unless you... No, it'll be on our system. He won at Epsom on the 25th of September.
Okay.
That was his last win.
Okay.
But it wasn't the drop, actually, from the 13th of August that he's gone to. He was dropped after that. He was dropped, first of all, but then he's been dropped again. So he was dropped from 97 to 93 from the 13th of August. He then ran off 93 at Newmarket. He then got dropped again to 90 at Yarmouth, finished 2nd, left him, and then he's just won at Epsom.
Okay. Well, I hope that explains crystal clear to me.
And the interesting thing about it, he's won the race. He's been dropped a 2nd time. He started 8 to 1 in a 8-runner race. We've set a puzzle, and by the looks of it, nobody solved it.
No. David says, and this is announced today, so David just he says, no Almanzor talk, no rating from Phil, or discussion. What about his point? Well, he's out.
Well, there was a rating on the Longines list of top horses in the world this year that we showed up earlier. He was on 127.
Moving to the Abbey of all races.
I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone here, but I'll do my best.
This is just any more emails on the Abbey? Bring them on. Joe says profitable, looks a solid each way bet in the Abbey. Been so consistently, I missed the break in the Numthal, drawn out of it, still ran a blinder in the circumstances, goes on any ground. Horse you like, Phil?
I like Mecca's Angel. As the British/European sprinters are looked at as inferior beasts, right? And you'd have to think that that's understandable over time. So when Mecca's Angel did that race last year, it was a devil's own job to get her into the 120s, even though you could definitely justify it, because the general view about from the handicappers in Australia and Hong Kong and Japan was that she's not good enough, and it was a one-off performance, and we've spoken about one-off performances. So the fact that she's done it again this year, you've got to be impressed with her.
Did you fight Mecca's corner? Is that what you're saying?
I fought it and lost it by £1.
So for the Chief, you're not actually proving much use to us. You fought Postpone's corner, lost that. You fought Mecca's Angel's corner, you lost that. Gordon Elliott had you to ransom over Diamond King.
The Southern Hemisphere guys wanted a £3 lower.
Yeah. And then at the end of all that, you put countermeasure on 112.
Yeah, well, time will show.
Time will. Time will. Personally, I think the Arkies run a decent gallop. The Japanese horse will win by 5 lengths, says Bob Bobby. You have the best turn of foot for a short run-in.
It wouldn't surprise me for him to win, as I've already said. Has anybody got back to you about this first Japanese 3-year-old to run?
No, no one was interested for that.
Okay, interesting one.
Not judged by the response.
No surprise if Makihiko wins. He won't win by 5 lengths.
David Carr says Phil Smith is right. Night Star was the horse that Phil Smith put up after finishing 6th in the wrong side in the Sherwood's Cup in 1998. He won at York next time out.
Wow.
That is a good effort, isn't it? I don't know if that's David Carr, the Racing Post
Well,
reporter.
he's pretty sharp, so it may well be.
Doesn't come from his email address. How important is the draw over the minimum at Chantilly? It's pretty important, isn't it? You don't want to be out in the middle of the track.
Do you know, it's interesting. I've learnt over the years to not be surprised when the draw is important over 1.5 miles or 1.25 miles. I think the draw, for example, at Ascot,
crucial in every race.
Over 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles is very important. The number of times when I've had a really nice handicap at Royal Ascot and the draw has been massive effect on it, and you'll have You know, certain horses drawn, you know, on one side of the track will be 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and the horses on the opposite side will be 11th, 14th, 16th, 17th, 18th. Never underestimate the draw. Probably the most crucial thing apart from the ground, and they're interlinked.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely with you on this, Phil. And I would take it a step further, because you've talked about big fields there, and obviously the draw is huge in a big field. But I actually think sometimes it's just as important in 3-runner races or 4-runner races, that if you're drawn on the rail and you're drawn in 4 off the rail, the guy in 4 has to make that decision. Is he going to drop in behind, or is he going to go forward? Whereas the guy on the rail can just sit and let everyone else. I really believe that even in small fields, it makes a massive difference.
Well, it can do because of style of running, definitely. So, you know, if you're drawn on, you know, 1, and, you know, you want cover, then you can drop it in, hopefully. But then, how many times have we seen horses in 4-runner races stay on the inside and not get a run because the jockey stayed on the inside and stayed on the inside? And you can sort of understand why they've done that.
And that style in particular, in big fields, if you're on a front runner, let's say there's a 20-runner race and you're on a front runner and the other front runner is 1 and you're 16, it can almost negate the fact that there are 2 front runners because you're so far apart that your horse is almost running a separate race. But if you've got a 4-runner race and 2 front runners, you've almost got no choice but to take each other on.
Absolutely, and I think also the other thing, they were talking about the sprint at Chantilly. My experience of sprints at Chantilly wouldn't be great, and they're not races I would have watched on a regular basis. But will they split into 2 groups? Yeah. Which is always another issue, because there's the speed on the wrong side of the track for your horse. You know, that's another issue. You know, so the study of the draw and where the speed is going to be in 5 and 6 furlong races is absolutely essential.
One bit of that conversation as we go to our next break that interested me, that Phil was fighting the corner of Mecca's Angel in front of these worldwide handicappers, only for them to admit that he doesn't watch sprint races very closely. We'll go for a break.
William Hill sponsors coverage on At the Races.
You've had an accident that wasn't your fault. You want help and you need legal advice. You don't want social media experts. You don't want strangers calling your home. You don't need celebrity endorsements. You need an injury lawyer for you. That's why we're called Injury Lawyers for You. Each case we take comes with our no-win, no-fee promise. If you need our help, call us or visit us online.
This winter, we're doing more to keep our customers' homes warm and working. British Gas, helping you look after your home.
You've come the distance on a Virgin train, so you're not just in the zone, you own the zone. This is your date with destiny. Time to run like no fish has run before. You are fortitude in fish form. You don't walk on water, you dance. You hit the wall like a wrecking ball. You're a lean marine running machine. You come, you run, you conquer. When it matters big time, Virgin Trains, be bound for glory.
We are Funding Circle. We help businesses grow with affordable loans. Businesses just like yours. And we work fast by making decisions quickly, so you can focus on doing what you do best. Our rates start at 6% per year. You'll get a quote instantly, and a dedicated account manager is on hand for you every step of the way. Funding Circle, better business loans. Get an instant quote at fundingcircle.com.
Green light, see? Making time already. Did you see it? And again.
Just call me Mr. Greenlight. Follow me, guys, because I'm winning tonight.
That's a driver win. Drivers win at confused.com.
If you're looking to transform your business, we've got amazing deals, like this Ford Transit Custom for just £155 per month.
sports. It's in the game.
Play it first with EA Access.
William Hill sponsors coverage on At the Races.
It's interesting. That Maracuja race is an interesting race. I know it's only two runners in effect, but it's worth talking about.
It is, Phil, and we're back. Okay. The red light up there means we're back on there.
I wasn't looking at
I'm pleased to see you're paying attention during the break. We are back. This is Ask the Handicap. It's lucky you didn't say one of your rather outrageous stories about you at the Breeders' Cup that you were telling me about earlier. We gave you the stats earlier about 3-year-olds in the Arc. Terrific stats from Phil Smith. And Gaz immediately responded, is this one of the main reasons for the weight for age amendment being implemented next year? Well, that's a good question. Is it, Phil?
It's a very good question. I have to say that our decision has not been driven by results in group races. Because there are other factors in group races, because obviously there are more. The 3-year-olds are basically, as a group, there's going to be more of those top horses than there are the older horses, because some of them have retired at the end of their 3-year-old career. So, you know, you're not quite comparing like with like when you look at Group 1s to really drive a change as big as the weight for age. But we looked at handicaps, and handicaps, obviously, horses are supposed to have an equal chance, and so therefore, you know, if the handicaps are coming out lopsided in terms of 3-year-old successes, over 6 years data, which is pretty compelling, then it was about time we sort of suggested that something was done. And then, thankfully, the stakeholders in the BHA and also the stakeholders in all the other European countries have all agreed. So the best thing about the weight for age change is, in my view, is it's a European-wide initiative. Because, as I'm sure you'll know, it's difficult enough to get people to agree in one country, but to get people to agree in 5 countries, the evidence must have been pretty compelling.
Is it slightly with this? I know you've taken a 6-year sample, and obviously the statistics in those 6 years have worked in your favour for changing this. But isn't it kind of the kind of thing that 1 year it may work, i.e. this year it might show that you've been the right thing, and then next year it might show you've done the wrong thing, and that's the kind of nature of the beast, so that there is really no right or wrong about this?
Well, the only thing is that at the longer distances in the second half of the year, the data over 6 years all showed that 3-year-olds were advantaged. So,
but does it take into account how many older horses are kept in training, how many horses are in training, all that kind of stuff?
Well, let's go back to your first question. So you're right that at some of the shorter distances, the evidence was compelling in some years, but not in other years, so we left them alone. Right? Because we wanted to be absolutely 100% confident that there wouldn't be a shift in the data from 1 year to the next. But the great thing about the data for the older horses over the longer distances in the second half of the year, they were really struggling to compete with the 3-year-olds. And that's over 6 years, and every year showed pretty much the same, some years even more than others.
So effectively, then, what you're saying is this does affect staying horses more than anything else, effectively. Gold Cup horses and the handicappers who stay.
Well, Gold Cup horses, you know, obviously they're going to be. It's mainly staying 3-year-olds, 1.5 to 2 mile 3-year-olds in the second half of the season, where the major changes are. But those changes in effect filter on through the weight for age scale through when those horses become 4. So the whole thing will start in June of 2017, but for 4-year-olds it won't start till January 2018. So it's going to be a while before we get through to that, and by then we'll have another year, if not 2 years, data.
Yeah. So Mark Prescott, I don't think totally agrees.
Well, when Sir Mark really disagrees, he'll tell me in no uncertain terms that he disagrees, and he sort of half disagreed. I think he was one of those things, a little bit like cumulative penalties with Sir Mark. He wasn't mad keen when we brought in cumulative penalties, but he disagreed a bit because I think he was torn between what's best for Sir Mark and what's best for racing. And I think for Sir Mark, he thinks that keeping it the same would be best for him, but I think he can see the advantage for racing. And similarly with cumulative penalties, I think his quote was that he can understand it, but it would make things a bit more boring. So he could understand why we'd done it, but it would not be good for him. So I think he's actually quite even-handed and even-minded on the subject.
Smart says the breed doesn't change. I don't think they mature any earlier. They don't mature any earlier. It doesn't matter if they are 10 pounds or 10 pounds worse, so long as differential remains the same. Times for horse races tell you that horses aren't improving very fast despite treadmills, artificial colours, la-di-la-di-la. Okay. We don't need to get too bogged down on that. Basically, it's a minor alteration, but it is actually something that on this show we've slightly quizzed about and pushed you about, and you kind of knew it was going to happen, didn't you? But you could never quite say it absolutely.
The honest answer is I didn't know it was going to
happen. You campaigned for it.
I was trying to suggest to all the various different groups that it would be a good idea, but I have to say that, you know, similarly to that, Gary O'Gorman, handicapper in Ireland, he would be more, even more so than I have been on the topic. So, you know, he was very much in favour of the change being made, and the Irish have been fantastic over the whole thing, as have all the other European countries, French as well. You know, it's very difficult to get a change like this through all the various different governing bodies in Europe. You know, I can't remember another change like this for many, many years.
In some ways, because of the way you treat Ireland with the handicappers, I'm almost surprised you didn't actually create your own weight for age scale just for Ireland, just to show you're in the charge.
The interesting thing about what the weight for age scale and why it has to be a European-wide initiative, and that is, imagine a Group 1 over a mile and a quarter in August, and you have a different weight for age scale in one country in a Group 1 and a different weight for age scale in another. That's just...
But we have that already, don't we?
No.
No, what about hemispheres? When an Australian horse comes over here, different weight for age?
Yes, but when they come over here, they run on our weight for age because we have a Southern Hemisphere version of our weight for age.
OK. I want to just have a look back at Newton Abbott. 26th September 2016, horse called Maracuja. Ran off 140.
It didn't run off a rating.
Was it? OK, I'll rephrase it. Was it rated 140 or not?
It was rated 140 as a hurdler.
Thank you.
And
did it go into this race with a rating of 140?
It came into this race with a 140 hurdle rating. It didn't have a chase rating because it's never run over fences before.
Well, it did in the paper.
It's never run over fences?
But you give them the same ratings.
But this wasn't a handicap. I only have to do it for handicaps.
So the ratings that are actually printed in the paper are nonsense?
Well, no, it was a 140 hurdler.
OK. So you reckon that this horse would, is 30 pounds below Faheen over hurdles?
Is Faheen... I think Faheen's
he's exalted.
I think Faheen's a bit higher than.
But they're exalted racings, aren't they, for some of these horses? Particularly summer jumpings. We saw it with
hang on a minute. It's his first chase.
So what rating would he get for this?
140. Because he hasn't... Because...
Oh, hold on. You've tried. That is terrible, Phil Smith.
No,
You've really let yourself down
the
here.
race?
How can you possibly say he's run to a rating of 140?
Watch the race.
I have watched the race. I was in covering the race. Probably watched it more times than you, clearly.
And he slammed a horse that's rated 143.
How do you know Ballybolly ran to 143?
He didn't.
Well, so how did Maracuja run to 140
I've got him running to 134 in this race. I've got him running below.
So why isn't Maracuja 137?
I've got no evidence that Maracuja has run better or worse than his 140. So I've kept him on 140.
So on that basis...
What evidence is that he's run better or worse?
What's he, 30 pounds off Sprinter Sacre, you're saying?
Maracuja, no more, but it's about 35, isn't it?
So you think... Who would you back? Sprinter Sacre giving £35 to Maracuja, or would you back Maracuja?
After two or three more runs, if he's still a 140, Maracuja. Because this horse is going to be a horse.
This horse is going to be a horse?
He will be a horse.
If you go into these federation meetings saying things like that, lads, this postponed, this is going to be a horse.
Trust me, this horse will win 2, 3, maybe even 4 races on the bounce. It's a really nice jumper. And it's got a motor.
But this is a decent horse. Isn't he going to struggle now because you've ruined the novice chase system, haven't you? So he can't run under penalties.
No, he can.
How many?
There's plenty of races he can run.
I thought you'd ruined all that.
He can run 3 times.
Because he's not going to win a handicap of 140, is he?
Well, he won't be qualified to run in one because to be 140 as a novice chase, you'd have to have run in 3 times.
Well, why?
To get in off 140. Because I like to have 3 runs in them in case I get them too high, Matt. I don't want him running off an inflated rating, so I want to see him run twice more.
How likely do you think it is that actually, I think I might even be able to give an example, which is always better than...
Can we just go back to this race? Because Ballyboley was an interesting race, an interesting horse.
Well, he needs a bit further, doesn't he?
Well, he possibly does, but I've dropped him £4. So he went into the race on 143 and he's now 139 because he's given weight in this race. He's given Maracuja £6 in this race. Next time he'll be getting £1. So he's £7 better for the defeat. I don't think Ballyboley did his stuff on this day because he didn't jump very well. And you were there and you probably would agree with me there.
No, he didn't jump well. Maracuja did.
Ballyboley's better than he showed the other day, but Maracuja is a horse.
But there is a real danger that summer jumpers And forget about the ground, because the ground can often be similar summer jumping and normal season.
Mhm.
Summer jumpers just get rated out of everything when the real season gets underway, so to speak. Let's take, and you can look this up on your computer, Ivor's Queen, who ran that day as well.
Mhm.
Now, Ivor's Queen is currently rated 123. I would argue that Ivor's Queen has absolutely no chance of winning anything off a mark of 123. And once the summer comes along, this horse is literally impossible for it to win anything off 123. It's just not 123 horse.
And what happens with these? This is a hurdler, yeah, of Colin.
Ivor's Queen. Finished third behind Sol Style, who's rated 110.
Right.
£13 below.
Well, first of all, Ivor's Queen has clearly not done her stuff on the day, has she?
Do you think that? I don't know.
Well,
what evidence do you have for that?
She started 4 to 9 and she's beaten by a 110 horse. So you've, in a sense, everybody thought she would win the race. She's gone in as the highest rating, and she's beaten by 110.
But
so that's
she may not
clearly
be worthy of that rating.
Well, she may not, and she may well get dropped for it.
What's she been dropped for it?
Well, I don't know yet, because it's this part of this week, and we don't know. So she may well get dropped, but she may not, because the handicapper who does that race may well say, well, for this reason and this reason and this reason, she hasn't been able to do her stuff on that race.
Phil, we were over time. We're there. That is it. You're going to be back in, not October, because you go on holiday to all the big festivals in October, but you'll be back in November.
Yep, on a different day.
Yes, we've been switched, but more of that another day. Luke Harvey has just popped into the building. Would have been quite entertaining if Luke had done this show, I suspect. Yeah, a man who took handicap